Reading 120 from the Psychological Commentaries on the Teaching of Gurdjieff and Ouspensky by Dr. Maurice Nicoll. Volume 3. Great Animal House, May 8th, 1948. Brief note on self-change. Work idea. Only the man himself can change himself. Commentary. It is impossible to change another by compulsion. No outer rules, regulations, laws, etc. can change the man himself. He may, through fear, or for reasons of self-interest, obey the regulations, etc., but this does not change the man himself. To change himself, the man must be in freedom. Compulsion will never do it. The man must see for himself the truth, before the truth will alter him. If man could be changed in himself by the application of outer compulsion, he could long ago have changed. But man was created a self-developing organism, capable of a definite inner change, and no outer forces can bring about this self-development. Notice, it is self-development of which the work speaks. Self-development can only be in freedom, from oneself. A man is in freedom as regards inner development. Only he himself can will to change. If he understands enough, he will begin to change in the freedom of his understanding. For his understanding is his own, and no one can take it away or force it. If, from understanding, he wills to change himself, then it is possible for him to change. But first, he must understand. Understanding, this work teaches, is the most powerful thing a man can create. Without understanding, a man can do nothing right, outwardly or inwardly. For example, people do not see the other side of themselves. They therefore blame each other for what is really in themselves. They see in others their own failings, which they refuse to accept. When they begin to understand better, they cease to lead this one-sided life. Now everyone knows that it is very difficult to accept anything adverse said about oneself. We are furious, contemptuous, and so on. Or if you point out another person's shortcomings, he will be furious also, or contemptuous, and so on. I well know, as a medical psychologist, the awkward point where I had to say to the patient, "Yes, I can see you have been badly treated, never appreciated, never properly understood. You have told me all that very clearly. But do you think that it is possible that you are not quite the ideal person that you seem to imagine yourself to be, and that there may be some quite serious faults in yourself?" Now you can all imagine the haughty look, the frozen smile, the magnificent rising from the chair, and the slamming of the door, without, of course, the fee being paid. Yes, but what has happened? We were recently talking of this. What has been touched? What would you call it? Whatever you call it, it is this factor that prevents self-change. I was reading recently a volume describing a British envoy's visit to Persia to see the Shah, somewhere early in the last century. The envoy landed in Basra with squadrons of hussars, horse gunners, magnificent tents, trappings, and all the rest. They advanced in a leisurely way to the capital because any hurry would have meant loss of face. If the Shah sent a message, they replied a few days later. If the envoy sent a message, the Shah replied a week or two later. If one side suggested a definite date, the other side expressed profound sorrow, but they were occupied on that particular date. Now, all this ceremony was to enable the envoy and the Shah to meet on equal terms, that is, without any loss of face on either side. Again, I ask you, what do you call this factor which exists in all, apart from envoys or Shahs? Have you noticed it in yourself? All this careful adjusting of the external situation by the British envoy and the Shah was to adapt it to this formidable factor for which we must try to find a name. It seems to lie very deep, deeper than false personality. Now let us glance briefly at the work, this system of psychology that we are studying. The work speaks constantly about the necessity of self-development. Man, it says, is an unfinished house. What is its starting point? Its starting point is self-observation. A man, a woman, must begin to increase their range of consciousness by observing themselves through this interior sense that we possess and which animals do not possess. Animals were not made for self-development. Man was. Animals cannot observe themselves. Man can. Now, if a person begins to observe himself in the light of the work, he gradually, after years of work on himself, begins to see what no doubt others have pointed out or have been longing to point out. If he sees for himself something of this factor in him, which is so formidable and the source of so much violence, then it is not aroused antagonistically. He sees himself. He begins to accept what he would never have accepted from another. It is in this way that the work deals with this otherwise intractable factor in man. Now, to all appearances, you may have practiced this work for years and never really done a stroke of work. Why? Because this formidable factor has remained untouched in you, as in a fortress, and has not yielded an inch